Good evening. It's wonderful to see that the lure of a great lecture takes everyone away from their bank holiday gardening. And we've got a good crowd again this evening and also online. We have a fantastic set of speakers this evening. As always, we've managed to have completely contrasting topics. We're going to start with our Student Award winner. The Student Awards are awards made by the Society to finishing PhD students whose research has shown some potential to be applicable, because we do celebrate in the Society that science, when applied, has important consequences. So this evening we have Dr. Nomisha Kurian, who is based in the Faculty of Education in Cambridge, and she's going to talk on Toddlers and Robots, the Ethics of AI for Young Children. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Nomisha, or Nami for short. I was really grateful to receive the CSAR award last year, and so I'm really honored to get to share my work with you today. I'm going to be focusing on the ethics of AI when used with young children. And some of the insights I'll share are from my most recent publication on Toddlers and Robots, the Ethics of AI Companions or Social Robots for Young Children who have particular vulnerabilities, such as disabilities. The lens I'm using, disciplinarily speaking, is early childhood education and care and children's rights. And the study I did was a secondary literature review where I used the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child to think about potential ethical concerns or pitfalls that might arise with cutting-edge technology. So to introduce the very nature of a social robot, the way I like to think about it is that a social robot, out of the many diverse forms of AI, is probably the one that comes closest to the Hollywood vision of a walk and talk robot, something you can bond with, something that feels appealing or trustworthy, very much the robot that's been immortalized in popular culture, the popular imagination. The more formal definition is that a social robot is an autonomous or semi-autonomous robot that interacts and communicates with humans according to the behavioral norms that we would expect in a social situation. This type of robot is designed to have an interface that can feel intuitive, engaging, that can communicate easily. If it's a humanoid model, then it might display human-like features like ears, a nose, a mouth, eyes. Alternatively, it could be designed to look like a cuddly stuffed animal or an appealing cartoon character. How does this connect to the early years or early childhood development? Well, first, we can think about the significance of this period for children's lifelong learning and well-being. The period of time from when you are a newborn all the way through till age 7 or age 8, as it's defined in some countries, is one of the most crucial windows we have for brain development. Just like UNICEF puts it, early moments matter. The first 1,000 days of life can shape a child's future. We have one chance to get it right. This is because there is such an incredibly quick pace of learning and growth in the early years. In 2017, the Harvard Center on the Developing Child learned that children under 5 form over 1 million new neural connections per second. And this is a pace of learning we never get again for the rest of our lives. So it's a really critical window of opportunity. Amongst the many different innovations sweeping the world in terms of supporting the learning, growth, and thriving of young children in this period, social robots have emerged as an interesting, as yet still evolving technology. More generally speaking, it's one of the fastest growing areas of AI and is projected to reach 17.2 billion USD market by 2028. And recent reviews of AI in early childhood education have shown that there has been a surge of social robots designed for children. Some of these users have been tutors for language learning, home tutors, teaching basic communication skills, reaching children with particular vulnerabilities, like young children in hospital or children with disabilities. Humanoid robots have taught young children with autism about emotions through games and music, have helped them pay attention to people, learn some communication skills, imitate actions, follow instructions, naming objects, matching colors. These are some of the purposes for which social robots have been used. And we might wonder at this point, why social robots? Why not just human teachers? The rationale for developing these models has been that social robots can't become tired or impatient. They can offer predictable and repetitive support, which can be useful for certain types of disabilities that young children can have. They can even show friendliness and empathy if programmed appropriately. It's too early for conclusive evidence, but there is some promising evidence to show that young children might make learning gains because of finding these robots quite engaging, entertaining. There's been some positive evidence in the field of early language learning and the field of making preschool storytelling and language learning more effective through that novelty value that a social AI model can bring. But what I'm going to be focusing on as the main theme of my talk is the ethical pitfalls or the ethical risks or considerations that can emerge. And I want to emphasize really strongly that I deeply admire the work that robotics engineers do. I find it absolutely fascinating, all the innovation in the space. So to think about the ethical concerns involved is not to devalue the benefits of these innovations. It's only to be part of an interdisciplinary conversation around what AI might look like in relation to education and children's well-being. The three concerns I spotlight here around child development, privacy, and well-being. So thinking about the potential risk to children's development and their right to be supported to develop to the fullest extent possible. One risk of a social robot is that, of course, it cannot offer the same type, range, or complexity of emotional and social interaction that a human tutor or caregiver can. And with that, a young child might have fewer opportunities to practice emotional regulation, which is a crucial life skill and executive function that revolves around being able to think about, manage, monitor, and process your emotions, especially difficult ones like being angry or being frustrated or being irritated. If you have a constantly agreeable companion in the form of a robot programmed to always be sympathetic, to agree with you, to fulfill your wishes, that might undermine a young child's ability to deal with the messiness of social life, to deal with the messiness of peer-to-peer conflict. In a similar way, being accompanied by a social robot that has a predefined script and pre-programmed interaction patterns might result in a young child having fewer opportunities for something called cognitive flexibility, which is the capacity to think out of the box, to respond flexibly and creatively to the very dynamic and unexpected nature of the social world. An example of this is that as I'm giving this presentation now, if I suddenly stopped and walked out of the room and threw away my laptop, a very unexpected and antisocial occurrence, the chances are that the convener of the event would be able to step in immediately and improvise a socially appropriate response to my actions, maybe a note of apology on my behalf. This is what we call cognitive flexibility, and it's something we practice again and again all through our lives. But a young child being accompanied by an AI model may never have the chance to figure out and navigate what it's like to deal with a constantly messy and unpredictable social world. Thinking about the risk to children's privacy, we live in what a sociologist called the age of dataveillance or data-driven surveillance. More and more of our personal information is being collected, processed, stored, and monitored by decentralized computer databases. And what that means for a child's right to privacy becomes concerning when we think about how social robots are intentionally designed to feel trustworthy and safe. We even had a study conducted by some really wonderful researchers at Cambridge who found that children confided more in a social robot than human interviewers when asked about their mental health challenges. And the researchers concluded that the children felt they wouldn't get into trouble if they spoke to the robot. They would not have to deal with the consequences or the judgment that might come with talking to an adult. This is where we get into murky ethical territory because we can imagine some different ethical dilemmas around a child's right to privacy. Social robots have been developed for pediatric settings for children in hospitals. So, what might happen if young children with health vulnerabilities share sensitive medical information with a social AI? Here, it's not just the act of sharing or the information concerned, it's also about the deeper ethical principle that a young child may never be said to be truly providing fully informed consent, given that even adults and AI experts are still debating the data privacy implications of technology that is still evolving. Finally, to go into the risks of child well-being, when we think about the right to be protected from harm, which is in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, there is the danger that a social robot might be able to produce only simplistic or inadequate responses to a child in emotional distress. We have worrying cases in other areas of AI, where, for example, a 2018 testing of 2 mental health chatbots by the BBC showed that these chatbots, even though they had been considered appropriate for children, when push came to shove, they were unable to adequately respond to children reporting sexual abuse. This kind of encounter could be particularly risky in the case of young children or young users who might not have social and cognitive capacities to, for one, know why the AI model wasn't able to respond properly, and two, to deal with the emotional consequences of that stressful encounter. So it remains to be seen whether similar mental health impacts might emerge with social robots as well. I'll close now by emphasizing the need for child-centered AI. This means taking into account how AI impacts children's rights. This would potentially mean incorporating the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child front and center into the development of technology. Thinking about what risks AI might pose for children's well-being, safety, privacy, and development in a holistic sense. Thinking about how children's voices can be prioritized in research and design that is participatory and attuned to children's voices. And in a grander sense, thinking about how child-centered AI looks, sounds, and feels. In closing, I would say that we are at such a unique moment in history where future generations are poised right in the center of cutting-edge technology. As UNICEF reminds us, today's children are the first generation that will never remember a time before smartphones. They are the first generation whose healthcare and education are increasingly mediated by AI-powered applications and devices. And some will be the first to regularly ride in self-driving cars. So this is a really unique moment of generational change, and perhaps a sustainable aim can be to put children's voices, particularly those who are the youngest and most vulnerable, front and center in the development of cutting-edge technology. Thank you so much for listening to me today. And I'd also like to say that I am aware of the wealth of expertise in this room. I would really love to hear from you. Any ideas or reflections from your own work? I've put my contact details up on this slide and would definitely welcome any conversations or insights or wisdom emerging from your reflections and practice if you would like to share. Thank you so much.